one of which, through mysterious routes, found its way to Exeter. So I hand you over now to the keeper of one such collection in Exeter in the UK, where the three of us work.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening. My name is Holly Morganroth, and I am curator at the Royal Albert Memorial Museum and Art Gallery in Exeter. Oh, I haven't done it, have I? There we go. The city is a cathedral city. Our cathedral is just 100 years older than the Qutb Minar. RAM, as it is known for short, is 150 years old this year. Its collections span art, archaeology, natural history, world cultures, and costume and textiles, and my specialism is natural science. 90 years ago, a local lady donated a collection of watercolour drawings to the museum. She was the granddaughter of a local botanist, the Reverend Richard Cresswell. Many of the paintings are quite familiar to me. They show coastal scenes of Devon, and also British wildflowers. Exactly the kind of thing that you would expect a Victorian clergyman to have paintings of in his collection. But in this very mixed collection, one set of 86 paintings stood out from the rest because they do not show British flora and fauna. They are of far superior quality to the rest of the drawings in his collection, and the images are clearly Indian. What was a vicar bimbling round in a little coastal town doing with a set of Indian drawings? We didn't know. We didn't have the answer. So we called in two experts from UK Botanic Gardens who identified them as company school-style paintings and confirmed their Indian origins. The company school is named after its association with the East India Company. As the company expanded its operations to include diplomacy and administration, greater numbers of European officers, and indeed their families, moved to the region. Many were stationed here in Kolkata. They became patrons of the arts, and local artists responded to European tastes, giving rise to the so-called company school of painting in the 18th and 19th centuries. One of the experts we asked said that the collection was almost certainly made in Bengal by Indian artists for these British patrons, probably in the 1790s. He said the collection is of the very highest quality and extremely important, both botanically and artistically. And from this point on, we knew we had something really very special. The drawings are very similar in style to those Roxburgh commissioned. They often show plants with their seeds and also dissections of their flowers and all the reproductive parts. We learnt that all the plants depicted had some kind of economic use which would have been of interest to the East India Company, whether they were for wood, dyes, or their use in Ayurvedic medicine. Having realised the significance of these works, the museum secured funding to have all of them conserved. Some just required stabilisation, where the paper edges had become very fragile. But in many cases, the paint had become discoloured. This was particularly noticeable on any of the whites and the yellow pigments that had been used. So at some point in their history, poor climatic conditions such as high humidity and pollution had caused the lead in the white gouache to turn black. This elephant apple was probably the worst affected. On the right is the same work after a specialist paintings conservator had treated the affected paint and returned it to its original colour. The museum learnt so much from the botanical experts that we asked to look at the collection, but we still had some big questions that needed answering. Firstly, how did Cresswell come by these drawings? But most fundamentally, we wanted to know who drew the paintings. 17 of the works actually have signatures on the reverse, both in an Indian language that none of the museum staff or the experts could read, but also in English underneath. Despite considerable research, the names were still a mystery. Neither books nor Google revealed the artists behind the drawings. Then, last year, Dr. Sengupta from here at the Victoria Memorial visited Exeter University, and together with Andrew and Nandini, he visited my museum. I grasped the opportunity to show them all this beautiful collection, and within hours, exciting new discoveries were made, demonstrating what can be achieved when experts from different specialisms work together. Now I hand you over to Nandini Chatterjee from Exeter University, who will reveal some of these exciting discoveries.
শ্রদ্ধেয় জয়ন্তদা, স্যার স্টিভ এবং মাননীয় অতিথিরা, নমস্কার। আমার নাম নন্দিনী চ্যাটার্জি। I teach history at Exeter University, as my colleagues just said. Let me take the time to say that it is an especially happy evening for me today, because not only because I'm back in my own city, but even more so because I'm able to present my research to all of you, but also to one of the best teachers I've ever had. Dr. Jayanta Sengupta taught me about the French Revolution when I was an undergraduate student at Jadavpur University. And what his teaching really alerted me to was the excitement and drama of history and the joy of discovering that past. It is thus with much joy that I will now tell you about this story of discovery that, as it happens, Jayantada was very much part of. In October last year, as Holly said, Andrew and I, together with Jayantada, visited the Royal Albert Memorial Museum in Exeter after Holly invited us to do so. Holly opened the doors to the stores of the museum, which most visitors never get to see, but where the most exciting material always lies. Holly lured us deep into Ram's stores, and there she showed us the collection of paintings that she has just told you about, and about the puzzle that she wanted to solve. And so, together, we looked at the beautiful paintings in the Creswell collection, admiring their jewel-like quality. Now, they were something new for me, because my idea of scientific drawing, derived from school textbooks, of course, was something like this. I never knew that scientific drawings could indeed be something like this. But Holly also directed us to the names written on the back of some of the paintings in the Creswell collection. And for your convenience, we have accepted the photograph of those signatures to the front of the picture. There are 3 names that keep turning up behind these paintings. The names, as Holly said, were indeed written in English, but they were also written in Bengali. Now, despite the somewhat strange spelling in English, which is simply archaic, few of you in this audience will have difficulty, I think, in reading this name, despite the somewhat different, that is archaic bha that you have in the beginning. This was a man who was called Bhavani Das. You also had a man whose name I think is now more legible to you. His name is Ram Das. This was easy enough for both Jayantada and me to read. However, there was a third artist whose name made no sense at all, not only to Holly and our colleagues, but indeed to ourselves, and to the 2 experts who had previously evaluated the collection. So I will let you have a look at it before I reveal what it indeed entails. To us, who read both the English and the Bengali, the name made no sense whatsoever, even though it was so clearly written out, in Bengali as well as English. Reading only the English, as Holly and her colleagues had done in the beginning, it appeared that this artist was called Sack, which surely was not possible, or maybe it was Jack. Jack Joynadi, that's a meaningless name. How could anybody have a name like that? But we could read the Bengali script. As Jayantada and I struggled to make some sense of that, the first part was easy enough. This man's name the first part of this man's name was not Sack, neither was it Jack, it was clearly Sheikh. What, however, was the second part? So now I'm going to take you through a whispering game, as history often is. What we could read there appeared to be a second name of this kind, which is Joyniddi, which still doesn't make much sense. Sheikh Joyniddi, what would that be? From the Sheikh, of course, I was convinced that this was the name of a Muslim artist, because Sheikh, an honorific, could only precede the name of a Muslim individual. But what is Joyniddi? I couldn't get this out of my head, and as it happened, I kept thinking about Kolkata. And as I thought about Kolkata, I thought of this place name, this street, which you would know of. Alimuddi Street, which you all know of, is, of course, even if you look on Google now, really Alimuddin Street. So what was clear to me then, that in Bengali pronunciation, names that end in uddin are frequently shortened to uddi, dropping the n. Following these steps, then, this man's name could be Joyn-id-Din. Correcting a little bit for pronunciation errors and separating out the components of the name, this man's name then would be Joyn-ud-Din, which, if we actually spelt it out accurately in the Persian script in which his name ought to be written, his name would be Zain al-Din. And that is the end of the whispering game. But all I had was a hypothesis that in fact there was an artist called Zain al-Din who was drawing some of these paintings. But how would I test if this was true? Like most of other people, I turned to Google, which Holly had done in the past, as she told you very meticulously indeed, but this time I was armed with 3 names rather than 2. So when I did the simple thing of Googling the proposed name of Zain al-Din together with Bhavani Das and Ram Das, these were the results. And I'll just let you read the first result to perhaps feel together with me the excitement that we would have felt when we realized that actually perhaps an immensely valuable collection of artifacts had been housed at the Royal Albert Memorial Museum. We repeated the search today, and as it happens, our project now comes up second, which wasn't originally the case. Now, following these results, of course, we now started looking for Zain al-Din. And now we discovered that Sheikh Zain al-Din was one of the most prominent painters in Bengal, if not all of India, in the late 18th century. We also discovered from the details which are presented in the websites of a number of museums across the world, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, from which I've extracted this information, that Zain al-Din led an artistic team based in Kolkata, and hold your breath, his colleagues were called Bhavani Das and Ram Das. So almost every single art historian working on Indian art in the 18th century in fact comments on Zain al-Din and the luminous, jewel-like quality of his work, some of which you can see in front of you, which was at the same time highly naturalistic and extremely accurate in its depiction of natural details. Now, this realism as well as delicacy matches perfectly with the Mughal tradition in which Zain al-Din had been trained and was an excellent representative of the late Mughal tradition. This man was born in Patna, had actually worked in the late Mughal Kalam tradition, had moved from there to Murshidabad, and from Murshidabad had made his way to Kolkata. And I hear that he's actually buried in Patna, so he made a circuitous route back to his place of birth. Now, on this beautiful painting of an orange-headed thrush from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York City, we have Zain al-Din's name written in Persian script. And the note actually reads, in the collection of Lady Impey in Calcutta, drawn by Zain al-Din, native of Patna, 1770. 1878. And by the way, the top 2 lines are actually a description of what the painting is, and it says, in Persian, it says, Daman-e darakte kachnar, which means the branch of the tree called kachnar, on which the bird is sat. Now, as the artist's identity was revealed, we also came upon an entire cast of characters. Some of them scholars, some officials, and there was a woman patron, as you just saw, Lady Mary Impey. The speciality was that this entire network of people were all located in the city of Calcutta at the end of the 18th century. And among them was the great Oriental scholar, Sir William Jones, on whom my colleague Andrew happens to have written a book. So I hand over to him.
Opposite the Asiatic Society itself. I think it's an electricity substation or something like that. Anyway, William Jones is perhaps best known for his theory that the Greek, Latin, and Sanskrit languages all sprang from a common source, so-called Indo-European, which is still found at the top of the language tree in dictionaries today. Jones, like all these other people, was steeped in Linnaeus, but he was a bit different because he believed that when you are in India, as he was, it was better to use Indian names for plants and animals, which in his case meant using Sanskrit, not Latin, as Linnaeus did. One of the plants on your invitation, the electronic invitation, is the Tamarind Plant, and on the screen is a little note on tamarind by Sir William Jones. Jones hated the word tamarind because it's falsely based on an Arabic word for a completely different plant, the date tree. Far better, he said, to use the Sanskrit word amlika, from which the Hindi word imli comes. But of course, the Bengali word taitul is completely different. Jones then is Indianizing the system of Linnaeus, and Jones said that if Linnaeus had known Sanskrit, he would have used it for Indian plants. So when you look at nature, you should use the language and ideas from where you are. But I should just add that Jones loved everything classical, so that meant using the Indian classical language, not Bengali. Like Cornwallis behind me, Jones was not the only 18th century Briton who liked dressing himself up as a Roman and imagining he was a classical figure. Jones was also a judge at the newly established Calcutta Supreme Court, whose boss was Sir Elijah Impey, Mary Impey's husband, the woman mentioned on the inscription that Nandini just read out. Sir Elijah Impey is the one who hanged Nanda Kumar, you may remember. Here's Lady Mary, painted by Gainsborough. And on the right is another example of somebody plonking a Linnaean name on Indian wildlife by naming the Impeyan pheasant after Lady Mary, who was just as colourful a character as the bird to which her name is given. Lady Mary Impey kept an aviary and a menagerie, and as we know from these inscriptions, she employed Indian artists, the three, Zain al-Din, Bhavani Das, and Ram Das, in order to paint them, in order to paint the creatures. In a private collection is this painting of Lady Mary Impey supervising her household. I think this is a wonderful painting. On the left, not sure where the pointer is. Is it the thing on the left? Oopsie daisy. No, excuse me. I think it's that button there. Oh, not to worry. On the left, halfway up, are two artists. They're the people squatting down holding a piece of paper. Could these be Bhavani Das and Ram Das? And who was the Indian artist resident in Lady Impey's household with the other two? It must be Sheikh Zain al-Din, who may also be the central figure presenting a painting to his patron Lady Mary in the classic Mughal tradition of the artist including himself in the composition. Lady Mary was not the only one keeping a menagerie in and around Kolkata at this time. This is shown by a collection, the collection, here at the Victoria Memorial, compiled by one John Fleming, and I will pass over once more to Holly to tell you more about this collection.
So we are very privileged to have been given access to the Fleming collection of around 215 zoological paintings on two occasions for our research. And we would like to thank Jayanta, his colleagues, and especially Joey, for their patience and their impossible generosity, giving us such wonderful access to the collection. So John Fleming was a surgeon with the East India Company, and like many surgeons, he was interested in natural history. He was an excellent botanist and especially interested in India's medicinally useful plants. When Roxburgh was on sick leave, Fleming covered his absence at the Botanic Garden as superintendent. Fleming corresponded widely and amassed a collection of plant and animal drawings by various artists. And some of his collection is here at the Victoria Memorial. The three of us have been researching these paintings intensively over the past few days, and we found that the paintings can be sorted into several different groups. This reveals several different artists with distinctive styles of their own, and very different ways of looking at, recording, and understanding the natural world. So these birds come from our first group. The birds are painted with this exquisite quality, often with their names given in Persian script. They're perched on quite realistic branches with naturalistic foliage, and some even show the fruits and seeds of the plant, suggesting that to the patron, the seeds were of equal importance to the bird subjects of the painting. Sadly, the artists of these are unknown. The second group consists of drawings of animals, painted in life, as well as dead specimens sent to Fleming from all around the world. At the time, Calcutta was a centre of natural history study, and the Botanical Gardens was a focus for an ever-growing zoological and botanical network. This drawing at the top is quite clearly just a bird's skin. This is the king bird of paradise from New Guinea. And here you can see what it should look like alive. And also there is this platypus here, which was sent to Fleming under the name of the sea mole from Australia. It actually was transported to India on a ship that had carried convicts. There are several depictions of this platypus in the collection, focusing on different parts of this newly discovered and peculiar animal's anatomy, its peculiar beak, its tail, and its webbed feet. It was actually much easier to send dead animals around the world than live ones, as Fleming discovered. This fishing cat had been given to Fleming, and he really wanted to send it home to England. However, as a note on the painting suggests, Fleming says, it's one of the fiercest animals in nature, and none of the sea captains would take it. I mean, imagine being stuck on a boat for 6 months with something as ferocious as this. I can't say I blame them.